I have not cured blindness. None of my surgical robots ever worked. I'm following the Surgeon General, and I can literally feel my telomeres getting shorter by the second. It goes without saying, it's pretty humbling to have the opportunity to spend time with this just crazy talented group of people. And you know, in some respects, this year has been a bit of a coming out for my organization in the world of health. And we're happy to be here because truly that is what it is all about, although we've been doing what we're doing for close to 50 years. Just by way of introduction, my name is David Kerkhoff. I do in fact work at Weight Watchers. I am a lifetime member of Weight Watchers. I'll talk about that in a minute. But I do realize it makes me sound an awful lot like the guy from Hair Club for Men. But the haircut's not as good. In giving a lot of talks and having discussions about obesity, there's a lot that happens which really focuses on how bad the problem is. And I can't help but do a little bit of that, but I thought it would maybe be a little bit better to spend a little bit of time talking about what can actually be done, and is there sort of a framework or paradigm that we could all think about in terms of having a positive impact. But I'll start with a little bit of the gloom and doom, which is no, this is not a political map. Some of you may have seen these before. They're from the CDC. It does look like a political map these days, though, doesn't it? What I find interesting is that if you look at 2009, the only blue state left is Colorado. So go Colorado. But I would also point out that Colorado in 2009 would have been the most overweight state in 1990. We all kind of know sort of how we got here. We've all sort of heard about the obesogenic environment. We know that available calories per capita since 1970 are up about 25%. Proliferation of processed food, that's mostly coming from foods with extra sugars and fats. We're sort of surrounded by it, and lo and behold, a very radical change and shift in the environment has created this condition known as obesity. While we kind of know where it came from, I think we also know a little bit the implications of it, which is, this is another map which looks surprisingly correlated. If you were remembering the previous map of the US, this is incidence rates of diabetes. And it's a little shocking that now today 11% of adult Americans are diabetic. That has doubled since 1970. What is a little scarier is that the latest reports from the CDC is that there's about 78 million people, or more than a third of the US adult population, is now pre-diabetic. The latest forecast from the CDC is that by the year 2050, 1 out of every 3 Americans will be diabetic. It is currently a $200 billion a year condition. You can do the math. At that rate, it's going to become the thing that has the potential literally to just crush the life out of the healthcare system. And I don't mean to be over dramatic about it, but you look at the impact that chronic disease is having, and it's just hard to get away from it. And the UN just came out last month and talked about the fact that by the year, I think it's 2030, that the estimation was that the planet would be spending $47 trillion a year treating non-communicable diseases. So that's chronic disease. We can't go on this way. Frankly, you listen to all the discussions, debt ceiling, this, that, entitlements, Medicaid, Medicare, but the fact of the matter is healthcare premiums across the board are up 10%. Healthcare costs continue to rise at a rapid rate, and you can't get around the fact that it is significantly driven by the way we live. And so it is intrinsically the thing that's difficult. Here's the good news. If you take diabetes, you do not need to get people to look like Valerie Bertinelli, not one of ours. You do not need people to look like Valerie Bertinelli to address the issue of diabetes. In fact, a 10% sustained reduction in weight for someone who is obese will reduce the risk of type 2 diabetes by 58%. So if you think about it this way, you take a woman who's 5'4", who has a BMI of 32, that makes her about 200 pounds. That is the average size of an incoming member into Weight Watchers. For her to lose 10% of her weight is to lose 20 pounds. That would take her from 200 to 180. You know, the media wouldn't say that that's swimsuit model success, but were she to accomplish that and sustain it, her life would be massively and forever improved as a result. And so that's the good news. The bad news is that this is hard to do. This is a graph that came out of some research from Duke University, which I'm quite fond of, not because I went there. But what it shows to me is it very nicely encapsulates the issue of obesity. And basically, the way the graph reads is you have age going one dimension and risk of disease going the other direction. And what you see is that, not surprisingly, the impact of obesity happens later in life. So here's one of the things, here's one of the sort of the inconvenient truths about obesity, is that for someone who's 35 years old, for them to go from obese to normal weight, if you ask, is there a positive ROI within 2 to 3 years for them doing that, the answer is probably not. The fact of the matter is that obesity is kind of like a balloon payment. It really isn't an issue in any of our lives individually until much later in life. What does that mean? It means that we as individuals tend to procrastinate it. It means that insurance companies don't really have any sort of incentive to address it when people are churning off their rolls every 3 to 4 years. The entire healthcare system, as it's structured today, has no particular incentive to address obesity until, frankly, it's too late. I do believe, though, with kind of all this gloom and doom, that this is addressable, and I say it because of a guy who I'm going to talk about in a minute. But the other thing I want to talk about a little bit is, you know, this whole topic of obesity. I took these from my local Barnes & Noble. Yes, it's still in business. And these are 3 of the 4 sections of the diet shelf, of the diet section. It's a lot of books. What I would tell you is that if you look at, for example, I think the government really got it right this time with the dietary guidelines and the My Plate. And it's a really simple message, which is fill half your plate with fruits and vegetables. Use the rest of your plate for lean proteins, whole grains, not so much junk food. Watch your portion size, exercise regularly. That's my book. There's just not that much more to it in terms of what to eat. And I'm not saying there's not a role for sort of good research around nutritional science. Absolutely there is. But for the vast, vast, vast majority of Americans, if we could simply get them to fill half their plate with fruits and vegetables, to eat lean proteins, to focus on foods that are high in fiber, basically non-processed foods, we'd be way ahead of the game. The problem is getting them to that place. The issue is not knowing what to eat, although that is an issue for a lot of folks. The issue is actually getting people to take a hold of this and make lots of changes. Yeah, what's up with this guy? So this was me in 1999. I was clocking in, men talk about these things. We'll actually say I weighed 241 pounds. I had high blood pressure, I had high cholesterol, and I frankly had no clue. It had been a long time since I had had a physical, but I didn't start this way. And I use this example of me because I think it's sort of very kind of, it's the way I think about sort of obesity, which is starting with individuals. And what I would tell you is that when I was a little kid, I didn't eat a lot of extra food because my mother prepared my food, and like I didn't get to eat junk food, and we only got dessert once a week, and then it was this horrible private label stuff from Safeway, and I was in the opposite of an obesogenic environment. Then I went to college. Life happened. Surrounded pizza, beer, all-you-can-eat cafeterias. I jumped from 170 to 210 pounds in a year. Then life continued. I'm on the road. It's room service. It's airplanes. It's sort of, you know, I basically, what can I say? I ate like an idiot. I knew nothing. I thought Kung Pao chicken was good for you because it said chicken. And I really was a little bit clueless about it. And it wasn't until I saw a doctor who told me that, you know, Dave, I get the fact that you're 33 years old, but it's time for you to think about going on Lipitor. That was a very cold glass of water tossed in my face. And it's not obviously what any 33-year-old person expects to hear, because you sort of like, I'm a tall guy. I could sort of convince myself that I'm carrying it and, you know, whatever. But, you know, now I look at him and put aside the fact that he's got a really ugly sweater and he's obviously not nice to small animals. This guy is very different from ultimately what I was able to become. So help him. And this is my point. It's interesting when you talk about obesity. It's not just one element of it. You'll hear people talk about impacting the environment. You'll hear people talk about the fact that it's an issue of personal responsibility. It's up to the individual. You'll hear a lot of different things. And I think the problem I have with that is it almost feels like we have to pick sides. But I completely disagree with that. Why can't it all be right? What if I was given an incentive and motivation to deal with my weight? And I was, by my doctor. What if I was given access to tools to help me through a weight loss process? I was. In my case, it was Weight Watchers. Yeah, I was one of those guys who went to meetings. There weren't a lot of us back then, but we're proud. What if I was in an environment where it was easy for me to make a healthy choice? What if that healthy choice was even economically advantaged? And what if, basically the reasons that I otherwise might not have participated, for example, with, having to pay for my Weight Watchers, I worked there, so I got it for free, or, the convenience of it, well, that was convenient for me too, because we had a Weight Watchers meeting right in our office, and there were a few within close proximity. But what if we could create an environment where we can improve our odds of success? Because here's the deal with any individual making a change, is that first off, a couple of statements. No one can make someone else not obese. Only an individual can make themselves and adopt a healthy lifestyle. What is a healthy lifestyle? A healthy lifestyle is a compendium of healthy habits. What is a healthy habit? Something you don't have to think about. I have a good breakfast every single morning of the week. Is that because I'm disciplined? No. It's because I do it so many times in a row that I can't remember how to do anything else. I exercise 6 to 7 times a week. I didn't start that way. Is it because I'm disciplined? No. It's because I literally have such a routine going that I can't imagine now not exercising. These are habits. It's behavior change. They take a long time to put in place. And the thing about obesity is that for any individual going through this process, chances are, in any given effort, they will not be successful. And that's okay. Chances are, even if they do have success, they're at risk of having recidivism and gaining their weight back. If you have a weight problem, you will always have to watch what you eat. It never goes away. You never can turn it off. You're never cured. Obesity is a chronic condition. That's okay, because as long as we work at it, as long as these mechanisms are in place, we can have success. And so the challenge I'll put out there is for all of us is what can we do respectively to improve the odds of people's success? What kind of incentives can we create on insurance premiums? How can we get doctors to take a more proactive role in talking to their patients about this? How can we make sure that there are the right tools in the toolkit in terms of helping people with obesity? What are great interactive tools that can help people with the behavior change process? I mean, we spend, as an organization, Weight Watchers by itself spends $25 million a year in software development purely for the development of behavior-changing software. This is the altar that we worship at. What if we were in an environment where all these things were kind of cleaned up? Let me give you an example to give you a little bit of hope. The Cleveland Clinic. This was just in the press about a couple of weeks ago. Their healthcare premiums are not going up next year. Their healthcare cost is no longer going up. They're doing it the right way. They give incentives to adopt well behaviors. They provide access to programs like Curves and Weight Watchers. They have cleaned up their cafeterias and their vending machines. They've dealt with their environment. And they've created all the right sort of 360-degree approach. And since 2005, their employees have lost 250,000 pounds. And this is not rocket science. Every presentation you've been seeing up to now kind of has been rocket science. This is not rocket science, but what it is it does require a systematic approach. Everything you saw before in terms of, reforming the healthcare system toward accountable care organizations, these types of things, getting consumers more directly involved in their healthcare, creating a program where doctors are more connected and can sort of resume the role of being quarterback of their patients. When those things happen, that will absolutely help this because it will help align incentives that makes this whole thing start to work. And what I will tell you is that the reward for doing this is actually pretty meaningful. So this is new me I've been here for a little bit over 3 years. And my latest readouts is my cholesterol went down from, 260 to 196. My LDL is 181 to 104. I mean, sometimes when I see this happen over and over again with people who have success, and I literally feel like a guy standing on a covered wagon selling snake oil, which is lose weight, it'll solve all of your health problems. But you know what? It's true.